The coffin had barely touched the ground when the world decided that compassion was no longer necessary. Under a bright, unforgiving daytime sky, surrounded by white marble graves and silent onlookers, a wheelchair stood alone near the edge of the cemetery path. In that wheelchair sat a young girl who could not move her legs, dressed in black, her hands clenched tightly as if holding herself together was the only strength she had left. Her father, once a powerful CEO admired by thousands, was gone forever. And before the flowers wilted or the prayers faded, she was about to lose her home too. If you believe that kindness still matters in a world that often feels cold and unfair, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Journal. Your support helps keep stories of second chances alive. The girl's name was Alina Moreau, and she was only 14 years old. An accident 2 years earlier had stolen the use of her legs, leaving her confined to a wheelchair and dependent on others for even the smallest things. Her father, Victor Moreau, had been her entire world since that day. Despite running a global technology empire, Victor had personally learned how to lift her, bathe her, and sit beside her bed every morning while sunlight streamed through the windows of their luxurious home. He never treated her like a burden. To him, Alina was his greatest achievement, not his company, not his wealth, but his daughter. When Victor died suddenly from a heart attack, the city mourned the loss of a business legend. News channels replayed his speeches, employees cried outside corporate towers, and politicians sent condolences. But none of them stayed when the black cars drove away from the cemetery. None of them noticed the woman standing stiffly beside Alina's wheelchair, her eyes cold, her lips tight with impatience. That woman was Celeste Moreau, Victor's second wife, a woman who had married into wealth but never into love. Celeste had tolerated Alina while Victor was alive because she had no choice. The house was filled with nurses, assistants, and Victor's watchful presence. But now the house belonged to Celeste, at least legally, and patience was no longer required. As mourners dispersed under the clear daytime sky, Celeste leaned down and whispered words that cut deeper than grief ever could. Alina was told she was no longer welcome. The house was being sold. The staff was being dismissed. And Alina, broken and helpless, was nothing but a reminder of a life Celeste wanted to erase. By the time the cemetery gates closed, Alina found herself alone. Her wheelchair was rolled to the sidewalk, her small suitcase placed beside her like an afterthought. The sun was still high, traffic moved as usual, and people passed by without realizing that a child had just been abandoned on the day she buried her father. Tears slid silently down Alina's face, not dramatic, not loud, just heavy drops of disbelief and fear. She did not cry for the mansion or the money. She cried because the one person who had promised never to leave her was now beneath the earth. Hours passed. The day remained bright, almost cruel in its normalcy. Alina's phone battery died as she tried to call numbers she barely remembered. She was hungry, thirsty, and terrified of what night would bring. Every sound made her flinch. Her legs, numb and useless, felt like an extra weight pulling her into despair. She wondered if this was how life ended for people like her, quietly, unnoticed, on a sidewalk while the world rushed past. What Alina did not know was that across town, in a modest apartment filled with children's drawings and mismatched furniture, a single father named Marcus Hale was fighting his own silent battle. Marcus was a construction worker, widowed 6 years earlier, raising his 8-year-old son Jonah alone. Life had never been easy, but Marcus believed in doing the right thing even when no one was watching. He volunteered at a community center on his days off, helped elderly neighbors with groceries, and taught his son that strength meant helping those who could not help themselves. That afternoon, Marcus had been delivering donated supplies from the community center when he noticed a news alert flashing briefly on his phone about the CEO's funeral. He almost ignored it, but something made him read further. A small, poorly written local update mentioned confusion at the cemetery involving the deceased's disabled daughter. No details, no follow-up. Just a line that felt wrong. Marcus felt a tightening in his chest that he could not explain. Without overthinking, Marcus changed his route. He dropped the supplies early and drove toward the cemetery, sunlight reflecting off the windshield as if urging him forward. He told himself he was probably overreacting. He told himself it was none of his business. But his hands tightened on the steering wheel, guided by something deeper than logic. When Marcus arrived, the cemetery was nearly empty. Workers were cleaning up chairs, flowers were being removed, and the silence felt heavy. Then he saw her. A small figure in a wheelchair near the road, her head lowered, her shoulders trembling. A suitcase sat beside her, dusty and forgotten. Marcus parked abruptly and stepped out, his heart pounding. He did not see a CEO's daughter. He saw a child left behind. Marcus approached slowly, careful not to scare her. He knelt in front of her wheelchair, the bright daylight illuminating her tear-streaked face. Alina looked up with wide, frightened eyes, ready to be ignored again. But Marcus did not walk away. He did not ask questions that blamed her. He simply stayed. Within minutes, Marcus understood enough. A funeral. A stepmother. No home. No plan. No one coming. Something inside Marcus broke and rebuilt itself at the same time. He thought of Jonah, of how fragile children were, of how close any life was to falling apart. He made a decision that would change everything. Marcus carefully loaded Alina's wheelchair into his van, securing it the way he had learned years ago while helping a disabled coworker. He drove her to a nearby cafe first, insisting she eat, watching relief slowly soften her rigid posture. It was still daytime, sunlight filling the room as if offering a small blessing. Alina ate slowly, as if afraid the food might disappear. Marcus made calls, not to lawyers or reporters, but to social workers he knew, to a nurse from the community center, to anyone who could help. That night, Alina did not sleep on the street. She slept in Jonah's room, where Jonah had insisted on giving up his bed. Sunlight greeted her again the next morning through thin curtains, a simple warmth she had not felt since her father's death. For the first time, Alina felt something unfamiliar. Safety. The days that followed were not easy. Legal battles began when Celeste realized abandoning a disabled minor carried consequences. News outlets discovered the story, not of a cruel stepmother, but of a single dad who stepped in when wealth failed. Marcus refused interviews, focusing instead on making sure Alina had medical care, therapy, and a routine. He learned her favorite foods, her fears, her dreams of becoming an artist. Alina learned that not all families were built by blood or money. Celeste fought briefly, more concerned with reputation than remorse, but public pressure and legal scrutiny forced her to step back. Victor's hidden trust, set up quietly for Alina's care, was uncovered, protecting her future. Marcus did not touch a cent of it for himself. He continued working, continued struggling, continued loving without expecting reward. As weeks turned into months, Alina changed. Her eyes carried light again. She laughed at Jonah's jokes. She painted scenes filled with bright daytime skies and open roads. Physical therapy became part of her routine, not with false promises of miracles, but with encouragement and dignity. Marcus never treated her like a charity case. He treated her like family. One afternoon, as Alina sat by the window watching sunlight dance across the floor, she realized something profound. Losing her father had shattered her world, but being abandoned had shown her something deeper. Love was not guaranteed by titles or wealth. It was proven by action, by showing up when it was inconvenient, by choosing kindness when walking away was easier. Before this story ends, if it has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to comment below and let us know what kindness means to you. Your words might inspire someone who feels forgotten today. The court eventually granted Marcus permanent guardianship. There was no dramatic celebration, no applause. Just a quiet moment where papers were signed under bright office lights, and a family became official. Alina held Marcus's hand, feeling grounded, chosen. She was no longer the CEO's paralyzed daughter abandoned after a funeral. She was a daughter again, loved and protected. On a clear daytime morning 1 year later, Marcus, Jonah, and Alina visited Victor's grave. Flowers were placed gently. There were tears, but there was also peace. Alina spoke softly in her heart, thanking her father for the love he gave and the strange path that led her to another guardian. She rolled her wheelchair back toward the car, sunlight warming her face, knowing her life was not defined by what she had lost but by what she had found. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. And don't forget to comment below before you leave, because your engagement helps these stories reach hearts that need hope the most.